Cool. Good to see everybody. Yeah, I'm Matthew from Kula. But I think I'll start with saying that running a small to medium-sized business is really difficult. I think a startup is also really difficult. In fact, it's so difficult, I would probably say if you were a sane person, you shouldn't actually start one. You have to be a bit crazy to start a business. I know usually when we come to these kind of events, we put on a brave face, but it's very painful, it's very difficult, and it's very tough to start a small business or a startup. And I think, when we come to events like this, generally we don't say that, but it's tough, it's painful to start a small business. And I think I've realized that after a couple of years. So I decided to put this picture, I don't know if you can see it clearly, but that was the that was the before startup, and this is the after startup. So that's when we were still very skinny and happy and smiling and optimistic. And yeah, that's now. So it's tough. It's tough. But really, I think the Kula journey started around 2012, when I also met one of my co-founders, Caridas, as part of Alen Gray. But I think even before that, and this might even sound like an Alen Gray ad, but a few years prior to this, I come from a bit of a background where, I come from like a small business family background. My dad had a small business. He ran a car wash, not a tech startup, a car wash, and sold secondhand cars. And I saw a lot of sort of booms and busts of him going bankrupt twice while I was growing up. And one of those times was around 2008. His business went under. And around the same time is when I was fortunate to meet someone who was basically pitching Alen Gray at our high school. And I thought, hey, this is my way to redeem myself, because no one's going to pay for my varsity fees, so let me redeem myself. So I kind of structured this thing together. I went on selection camp, and that's when I met Caridas, who's my co-founder, which was in 2012. We just happened to go to UCT together, and we were sort of brainwashed into this entrepreneurial thing. So if you see that picture, that was us kind of being brainwashed to start a business. So we're coming up with every bright business idea we could think of, right? So in 2012, we thought, hey, we were both studying finance, so we're gonna just basically start a finance education business, right? Doesn't sound very cool. I probably wouldn't win the competition if I pitched it on the stage. But we decided to start a financial education business. And we were a bit crazy, and we said, look, we're going to launch a magazine, right? We're going to launch a magazine. And funnily enough, we met these publishers who happened to publish one other magazine, which I don't think I've ever told anyone, but they published Playboy magazine. That was the other magazine that they published. And they published our magazine, right? So we went out there. We managed to convince someone to give us some money. And we printed 20,000 copies of this magazine, which I think cost us about R500,000, and we made absolutely no money off the magazine, right? So yeah, it was quite a stressful time. I think by the end of first year, we got into about R1 million of debt. So we decided in second year, we're going to drop out to try and recover in the business. So 2013, Curtis and I both decided to drop out. We moved from Cape Town to Joburg, and we decided we're going to redeem ourselves with this business. We're now about just over R1 million in debt, and yeah, we continued. But I think we kind of saw that this magazine thing was a sinking ship, right? So we kind of did pivot the business. We still went into the sort of the financial sort of marketing and events and that kind of stuff. So we dug ourselves out of debt, but we realized that this wasn't the best business to be in. So I think around that time, we thought, what is the next thing that we can do, right? So 2015, there was this program called Young Trips with Investec. So we kind of started putting ourselves out there with all the different opportunities we could find. And we went on this program, and we saw sort of all the innovation that was going on in agriculture in Israel. You know, in the middle of a desert, you know, they've got such a great agricultural output because of the technology that they use. And we kind of, our eyes were open to the ecosystem that was there. And we happened to be with other South African entrepreneurs on the trip. So I think these kind of gatherings also sometimes spark ideas. And when we came back to SA, we were looking at the agricultural industry differently, right? And when we dug in and did a bit of research, we realized that 60% of the world's arable land is in Africa. And more than half of all small businesses, or actually half of all people on the African continent, are dependent on agriculture for an income. So we thought, wow, this seems like a great opportunity. So we kind of jumped ship, and we started the Kula thing, which was around 2016. Yeah, I think a bit prematurely, we won MTN App of the Year. A bit prematurely, we won MTN App of the Year. So we went from this small pilot of 50 farmers that we were working with to like 1,000, 2,000 farmers that wanted to come onto the platform. And we very quickly realized that what we had built was not good enough. There's a lot of gaps in the idea, but it boosted us up there. Yeah, and that's kind of how it's gone. We started out as a fresh produce trading platform, but I think really the MTN App of the Year exposed us in terms of, you know, the product wasn't really ready for market. So, yeah, 2019, we launched our Inputs app, which is basically a platform where farmers get technical support. They get all, you know, fertilizer, seed, chemical, technical support, that kind of thing. And ACI came in to invest in the round, as well as Esquared. And that's kind of where we got now. But I think really the reason why we started the business in the first place was really around the stories behind the customers that we're dealing with. You know, like I mentioned, 500 million farmers dependent on agriculture for an income, and the stories is what really inspired us to keep going, despite how difficult it was. And I think maybe just a bit into you know, what are we solving and what does Kula offer? And really it's about looking at, you know, what challenges does a small business face? I mentioned, you know, running a small business is tough, but imagine running a small farming business. You know, at least in maybe a tech business, if it hails or rains, you're not taken out of business. But in a farming business, it's very tough. And, you know, one of the realities we saw with running a small business was that nobody really takes you seriously, right? We've seen it ourselves, but in the agricultural space, nobody takes you seriously. So if you're trying to get technical support, and the agronomist doesn't want to visit your farm, it's very frustrating. If you're looking for funding, the banker doesn't want to visit your farm because you're not big enough. If you are looking for a market or a contract, it's not worth the buyer's time to even visit you, right? So they say the cost to serve is just too high. So really that's what we saw as the big headache around what we were trying to solve. And over time, like I mentioned, we've grown this into really an ecosystem for the agricultural industry, where, you know, you've still got the marketplace side. We come in with the technical support to help the farmer grow. And something that we're really excited about on the fintech side, I didn't know this was a fintech conference, but really we're building new ways for farmers to get funded, basically using these contracts, using the technical support that we give, and using the platform to derisk how people can work with farmers. Another buzzword, AI. I didn't know we were talking about AI either, but really it's about how do we leverage intelligence to service these customers. I think that's the basics of it. You know, if it's too expensive for an agronomist to visit a farmer, what can AI do to provide that same support to a farmer to get your recommendation, your fertilizer recommendation, without having to wait for someone to do it because they're not going to come to your farm? You know, if it's from a funding perspective, how do we also use AI to get this farmer, funding ready, analyze their books, all of that, to get them ready for funding. So really, the next level that we're going to is really giving this intelligence to a small business because nobody else wants to service them or work with them. Another thing I wanted to maybe touch on is the fundraising side of things, because we're at a startup event, and I'm sure that's what everyone really cares about when they come to this event. But I think we've also been on a difficult journey on the fundraising side, and I thought maybe there are some insights that we've learned along the way of how we've done our fundraising. So I think firstly, we were pitching for funding from day one before we even had a product. But it's a difficult journey. You go to a VC and they tell you, how much money have you put in? Okay, you haven't put in anything. How much money am I going to put in? Okay, I'll take 90%, you take 10%. That's kind of like the experience that we've had with just going direct to VCs. And it's a difficult journey. We got rejected a lot of times. But I think one thing that really worked for us is actually going to strategic partners and clients to actually become investors in your company. So I think we're quite grateful, and we're quite grateful for the partners that we've been able to bring on board. I think one of the first was obviously Esquared, who backed us. ACI is one of the biggest agro and fertilizer distributors and manufacturers in the country. And they became our first equity shareholder just because there was value in them getting more business from investing into us. So they didn't want to take 90% because they saw the bigger picture. ABSA as well, we were actually pitching to our old magazine idea, and then right at the end of the presentation, we're like, we've also got the agri thing, and they're like, okay, we like the agri thing more. And then that's how the journey started with them. But even from that perspective, they saw the bigger picture of what this could also do for their business as a partner. And most recently, we brought in PepsiCo, which is obviously the biggest food manufacturer in the world, onto the cap table. And similarly, they saw value in local sourcing and all that kind of stuff, and they invested into the company. So I thought this could be a good thing to touch on around looking more for strategic partners who can come in, which has worked quite well for us. As I said, it's a tough journey. I think it's an extreme sport. I've even started watching motivational videos from marine SEALs that say wake up at 4 a.m, and that's how much of an extreme sport it is. But I think you have to be a bit crazy to do it. It has to be in your DNA. It's not so glamorous. So if you're in it for the fun, it's not the place for you because it's very tough. But at the end of the day, it can be rewarding. It just takes a lot of years. I think I was saying to someone earlier, we've kind of been at it for like 13 years, So it's really not a long journey, but I think it's not an easy journey. But I think anything you do, it's probably going to take you 10 years plus to do it. So if you want to do it in 1 year or 3 years, maybe it's not the right thing for you. But you have to kind of take that 10-year, 15-year outlook. It's been a great journey. This is our team. If there's any great developers in the crowd, we're looking to hire some good developers. So come chat to me afterwards if you are interested. Thank you.